There are moments in life when it feels like evil is winning and God seems distant. We may not always understand why things happen the way they do, or why injustice seems to thrive. If you've ever felt this way, you're not alone. The prophet Habakkuk asked these very questions centuries ago. Habakkuk's story is filled with honest, heartfelt doubt. He wasn't afraid to bring his frustrations directly to God. What he discovered wasn't just answers, but the deeper call to live by faith, trusting in God's goodness, even when everything around him seemed uncertain. So what do we do when life doesn't make sense? How do we hold on to hope when it feels like God is distant? Join us as we explore Habakkuk's journey and learn together how to trust in God's justice and find joy, even in life's most difficult moments. In the days of Habakkuk, the world seemed to be falling apart. Judah, once a nation that followed God, was filled with violence, corruption, and injustice. The people had turned away from God, and wickedness was thriving. Habakkuk, a prophet of God, couldn't take it anymore. He looked around and saw suffering everywhere, the innocent being oppressed and the guilty living in prosperity. He couldn't understand why God was allowing all of this to happen. And so, with a heart full of frustration, he cried out to God. God, how long do I have to call for help, but you don't listen? Why do you make me look at this injustice? Why do you tolerate wrongdoing? Habakkuk's complaint is something many of us can relate to. We often wonder why, in a world filled with suffering, God seems silent. Where is his justice? God answered, but it wasn't the response Habakkuk expected. Instead of promising immediate relief, God said, "Look at the nations and watch. Be amazed. I'm going to do something in your days that you wouldn't believe even if you were told." What was God going to do? He was raising up the Babylonians, a ruthless, terrifying empire, to bring judgment on Judah. For Habakkuk, this made no sense. He was confused, shocked even. How could a holy and just God use such a wicked nation to punish his people? This only deepened Habakkuk's struggle. He questioned God again, saying, "Lord, how can you let this happen? You are too pure to look on evil. Why are you silent while the wicked swallow up those more righteous than themselves?" His confusion grew. He thought God was supposed to save the righteous, not empower the wicked. Yet despite his confusion, Habakkuk did something remarkable. He decided to wait on God. He didn't turn away in frustration or despair. Instead, he said, "I will stand at my watch and station myself on the tower. I will wait to see what he will say to me." Habakkuk trusted that even though he didn't understand, God would respond. And God did. He told Habakkuk to write down the vision he was about to give, because it would surely come to pass. Even though it might seem like justice was delayed, God assured Habakkuk that his plan was in motion. Evil may seem to have its day, but God's judgment will come at the appointed time. Though it linger, wait for it. It will certainly come and will not delay. In the middle of this conversation, God spoke a truth that echoes through the ages. The righteous shall live by faith. This is the key to understanding the entire story of Habakkuk. Even when life doesn't make sense, even when it feels like evil is winning, those who trust in God live by faith. We may not always understand his ways, but faith means trusting in his goodness and justice even when we can't see the full picture. God went on to pronounce judgments against the Babylonians, showing Habakkuk that although he was using them to bring judgment on Judah, they too would face consequences for their wickedness. Their violence, greed, and idolatry would not go unpunished. The message was clear: no nation, no matter how powerful or terrifying, can escape God's justice. Babylon's rise to power was only temporary, and they would eventually fall. As Habakkuk listened to God's words, something began to shift in his heart. He no longer focused on demanding answers to his questions. Instead, he turned to prayer. He remembered how God had acted in the past, how he had saved his people with mighty acts and displayed his power across the earth. Habakkuk's prayer was one of both awe and request. Lord, I have heard of your fame. I stand in awe of your deeds. Repeat them in our day. In our time, make them known. In wrath, remember mercy. Then something truly remarkable happened. Habakkuk, who had started with frustration and confusion, ended with faith and joy. In one of the most powerful statements of trust in the entire Bible, he declared that even if everything went wrong, if the fig tree didn't blossom, if there was no food in the fields, if all hope seemed lost, he would still rejoice in the Lord. He would still find joy in the God of his salvation. The sovereign Lord is my strength, Habakkuk said. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to tread on the heights. This is the beauty of Habakkuk's journey. He began by wrestling with God, asking hard questions that many of us have asked. Why does evil seem to win? Why does God allow suffering? But by the end of the story, Habakkuk had moved from confusion to faith, from complaint to trust. He didn't get all the answers he wanted, but what he got was far better. He gained a deeper trust in God, a faith that could endure even when life didn't make sense. This story invites us to do the same. We may not always understand why things happen the way they do. There are times in life when evil seems to be triumphing, and it feels like God is distant, but like Habakkuk, we are called to live by faith. Faith means trusting in God's goodness, even when circumstances say otherwise. It means believing that God's justice will come, even if it seems delayed. The righteous live by faith, and faith leads us to a place where we can rejoice in God, no matter what. Habakkuk's declaration is a reminder that true joy doesn't come from our circumstances, but from God Himself. Even if everything else falls apart, we can still find strength and joy in the Lord. Habakkuk's story is a story of hope. It teaches us that while we may wrestle with God and struggle to understand His ways, we can trust that His justice will ultimately prevail. And as we wait for that day, we can live by faith, rejoicing in the God of our salvation.